The hall was full long before the program even started. People were chatting, taking pictures, and waiting for the famous pianist who was invited as the main guest of the evening. It was a community event, not a big concert, so the atmosphere felt warm and relaxed. Families sat together, friends whispered excitedly, and many children looked around, hoping to catch a glimpse of the pianist they had only seen online. When she finally walked in, the crowd clapped loudly. She smiled politely and waved. Even though she performed on the biggest stages around the world, she always liked small community events. They reminded her of where she began. She didn't expect anything dramatic today. She thought she would play 2 or 3 pieces, talk a little with the audience, and that would be it. A simple, calm evening. She sat down at the piano and adjusted the seat. The soft lights above her made the stage look warm and gentle. Before she could start her first piece, one of the event organizers quickly came to her side. He whispered something in her ear, and she nodded with a soft, surprised laugh. She then turned to the microphone and said, "It seems someone from the audience would like to try the piano for a moment. I think we can give them a chance." The crowd murmured with interest. They always loved little surprises. The pianist stepped away from the piano, allowing space for whoever wanted to come up. After a few seconds, a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, slowly walked toward the stage. She looked shy and a little unsure if she was doing the right thing. Her clothes were simple, her hair tied loosely, and she held her hands together as if trying to stop them from shaking. People watched her with mixed expressions. Some smiled kindly. Others whispered things like, "Maybe she play a children's tune," or "She must be nervous." The famous pianist noticed her hesitation and gave her a warm nod from the side of the stage. She wanted the girl to feel safe. She had seen many people try the piano at events like this, but usually it was just a short, simple performance. Something light. Something sweet. Nothing too serious? She didn't expect this moment to become anything different. The girl reached the piano and sat down carefully. She took a deep breath and placed her hands on her lap. The hall grew quiet. She didn't look at the crowd. Instead, she looked at the piano keys, almost as if she was greeting an old friend she hadn't seen in a long time. For a few seconds, she didn't move. The famous pianist watched her closely. Something about the girl's stillness caught her attention. It wasn't the nervous kind of stillness. It was something else, something deeper, like she was preparing her heart. Not just her hands. The girl finally lifted her hands and rested her fingertips on the keys. People leaned forward slightly. No one expected anything big. No one expected anything shocking. But the very first note she played changed everything. It wasn't loud. It wasn't fancy. It was just one single note. But it carried an emotion so strong that the entire hall went silent instantly. The famous pianist, standing at the side, looked up sharply. She didn't expect that. That one note sounded like someone pouring out a story without words. It wasn't the sound of a beginner. It wasn't even the sound of someone who plays casually. It was the sound of someone who had lived with music for a long time. The girl began playing slowly, as if she was letting herself sink into the moment. Her fingers moved softly across the keys, touching each one with care, like she was painting a picture. The melody she created felt warm, deep, and filled with quiet emotion. People in the audience stopped whispering. Their expressions changed from curiosity to surprise. Some even held their breath, not wanting to disturb the moment. The famous pianist stepped forward slightly, unable to hide her shock. She knew exactly how difficult that style of playing was. It was not something you learn in a few months. It was something that required years of connection with the instrument. The girl wasn't just playing correctly, she was playing with a feeling that only true musicians develop. The hall stayed silent as the girl continued. Her shoulders relaxed, her breathing steadied, and slowly her nervousness faded. It seemed the piano brought her comfort. She played with her eyes half closed, as if listening to a memory inside her. Each note carried a gentle sadness, mixed with hope, making it impossible for the audience to look away. People began to exchange glances. No one had expected this. They had come for the famous pianist, but now they were seeing something completely unexpected. a hidden talent sitting right in front of them. Someone they had walked past earlier without noticing. The famous pianist felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't jealousy. It was recognition. She recognized the kind of heart that plays not just for applause, but for survival, for comfort, for expression. She recognized the kind of person who found refuge in music when words were not enough. The girl changed the tempo softly, letting the melody fall and rise like a quiet breeze. Her hands moved with confidence, even though she herself looked so gentle. The famous pianist found herself smiling without realizing it. A smile filled with genuine admiration. The girl reached a part of the melody that was more complex. Her left hand created a deep, rich foundation while her right hand carried a delicate tune on top of it. Even trained musicians sometimes struggle with this balance. But she did it naturally, as if it was part of her soul. Some people in the audience began getting emotional. A woman in the front row wiped her eyes. A little boy sitting beside his father leaned forward, completely mesmerized. An older man held his chest lightly as if the music reminded him of something long forgotten. The famous pianist knew then this young woman was special. Truly special. She had seen many talented students, many skilled performers, but this girl's playing wasn't just skill. It had life. It had truth. It had a story inside it. After a few minutes, the melody gently came to an end. The last note hung in the air, soft and honest. The girl lifted her hands slowly from the piano and placed them again on her lap. She did not look at the audience. She seemed almost shy about what she had just done, as if she didn't realize how powerful her performance was. For a moment, the hall stayed completely quiet. A silence filled with disbelief. Then suddenly the entire room burst into applause. People stood up, clapping loudly, many cheering and whistling. The girl looked startled. She never expected such a reaction. She looked around with wide eyes, almost confused. Her face turned red, and she quickly stood up from the piano, unsure of what to do. The famous pianist walked up to her with a warm smile. She placed a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder, reassuring her. The audience continued cheering, completely swept away by what they had just witnessed. The pianist leaned in slightly and whispered something to the girl, but the microphone didn't catch it. The girl nodded nervously, still overwhelmed by the noise and attention. The applause went on for a long time. Longer than anyone expected. Children clapped excitedly. Adults looked amazed. Even the event organizers looked at each other as if wondering how such a performance had gone unnoticed for so long. When the applause finally softened, the famous pianist stepped forward to speak. She didn't reveal anything yet. Instead, she simply said, "I think we all agree this was a beautiful moment." The audience clapped again, this time more gently. The girl stepped back quietly, almost trying to blend into the background. She did not seem used to attention. She looked like someone who preferred silence, someone who lived in her own small world. But her music had just revealed something extraordinary about her. The famous pianist invited her to sit at the side of the stage, near her instead of going back into the crowd. The girl nodded shyly and took a small seat. She still looked overwhelmed, but also somewhat relieved to be away from the center of attention. As the event continued, everyone's mind stayed on that surprising performance. Whispered conversations filled the hall. People wondered who the girl was, how she learned to play like that, and why she had never performed anywhere before. What none of them knew was that the girl's story was far more complicated than anyone imagined. And the famous pianist, standing on stage preparing for her own performance, was already thinking deeply about what she had just witnessed. She came to this event expecting a simple evening. But now, everything had changed. The famous pianist walked toward the piano again, but her mind was still on the girl who had just played. She sat down and began her own performance, yet a part of her kept replaying the girl's first note in her head. It was rare for something to surprise her after so many years on stage, but tonight felt different. She played calmly, but she knew the audience was also thinking about the girl. The room felt changed, as if her performance had opened a new door inside everyone. When the pianist finished her first piece, the crowd clapped politely, but their excitement was still mixed with curiosity about the girl. The pianist smiled, understanding the audience's thoughts, and continued with two more pieces. She played beautifully, but even she felt that something tonight belonged not to her, but to the girl who had stepped on stage so softly and left such a strong mark. After the final note of her last piece faded, the pianist stood up and thanked the audience. People clapped warmly. The event host came forward, ready to close the program, but the pianist gently raised her hand and asked for a moment to speak. The hall grew quiet again. She turned toward the girl, who was still sitting at the side of the stage, her hands resting nervously on her knees. She looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. The pianist smiled softly at her, then addressed the audience. "I want to talk about the young woman who played before me," she said, her voice calm but full of feeling. The crowd leaned in, eager to hear more. "I have played in many places, listened to many talented people, and worked with many students. But what I heard tonight was something rare." The girl blinked in surprise, not expecting such praise. A few people in the crowd nodded in agreement. The pianist continued. Her playing was not just skill. It felt alive. It felt honest. It felt like someone who carries music inside her heart every day, even when no one is watching. The girl lowered her head, embarrassed and emotional at the same time. Someone in the audience whispered, "Who is she?" Another person whispered back, "Maybe she's trained secretly." A few people even thought she might be a hidden professional playing a prank. But her shy posture showed she was nothing like that. The pianist turned to the girl and gently asked her to come back on stage. The girl hesitated, but the audience clapped softly to encourage her. She stood up slowly, walked toward the piano again, and stood beside the famous pianist with unsure eyes. The pianist smiled to relax her and said, "Can you tell us a little about yourself?" "Only if you feel comfortable." The girl took a small breath. She looked at the crowd, then at the pianist, and spoke in a quiet voice that made everyone pay attention. I never learned properly," she said. "I used to go to the community center near my home. They have an old piano there. I would go when no one was around, and I just tried to copy what I heard online." The audience reacted with surprise. They didn't expect that. The pianist looked thoughtful, almost emotional. The girl continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I didn't have money for lessons, so I watched videos. Sometimes I listened to recordings many times and tried to play the same. I didn't know if I was doing it right. I just kept practicing." Her words were simple, but they carried a strong sincerity. People in the hall listened carefully. Some felt a sudden respect for her. Others felt sadness, thinking about how much talent goes unnoticed in the world. The pianist put a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder and said, "You play better than many people who have been trained for years. That kind of emotion cannot be taught. It comes from your life, your heart, your experiences." The girl looked down again, holding her hands tightly. The pianist then turned back to the audience. "Sometimes," she said, "music finds its way into someone's life quietly. And that person doesn't even know how special they are until one moment reveals everything." The hall filled with soft applause. Not loud or wild, but full of warmth. The pianist then looked at the girl and asked gently, "Can you play something again? Anything you like? Don't think about the crowd. Just play the way you always play." The girl hesitated, nervous all over again. But the pianist encouraged her with a nod. So the girl sat down at the piano once more. This time the room was so silent that even breathing felt loud. She lifted her hands slowly and began to play a piece she had created herself over the years without realizing it. It wasn't from any book or lesson. It was something she had put together from emotions, memories, small bits of melodies she had heard, and her own quiet world. The moment she began playing, the hall softened again. The audience felt something familiar, the same deep honesty she showed earlier. Her hands moved with natural ease. She played not to impress, but to speak. Every note felt like a gentle confession. Every pause felt meaningful. The famous pianist closed her eyes and just listened. A soft smile formed on her face. She knew she was witnessing something rare, a self-taught musician with a heart made for music. The audience sat still, many with emotional expressions. One young man covered his mouth in awe. A woman held her hands to her heart. A few people blinked away tears they didn't expect. When the girl finished, she didn't look up immediately. She kept her hands on the keys for a second, as if slowly letting go of her feelings. Then she lifted her head and the applause came instantly. This time the applause was much stronger than before. People stood up again, cheering with real admiration. The girl looked overwhelmed but also a little lighter, as if playing had released something inside her. The famous pianist walked up to her and wrapped an arm around her in a gentle half-hug. The girl looked shocked but grateful. The pianist then addressed the crowd one more time. "I would like to give her an opportunity," she said. "If she wishes, I can help her get proper training. I can guide her, mentor her, or even help her apply for a scholarship. Someone with her gift deserves a chance." The audience clapped loudly again, supporting the idea completely. The girl looked up at the pianist with wide eyes. "Are you sure?" she whispered. The pianist nodded warmly. "I'm very sure. Talent like yours should not stay hidden in a quiet room. It deserves a stage." The girl's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them quickly, trying to stay calm, but her emotions were too strong. She finally whispered, "Thank you. Thank you so much." The pianist smiled and replied, "Thank you. You reminded me tonight why I fell in love with music in the first place." The audience watched them with admiration. Some took pictures, some recorded videos, but most people simply absorbed the moment with respect. After the program ended, many people came to speak to the girl. Some told her how beautiful her music felt. Others asked if she had ever performed anywhere before. She answered shyly, always saying she had only played alone. The famous pianist stayed near her, answering people's questions and making sure the girl wasn't overwhelmed. The two talked quietly between conversations. The pianist asked about her background, her daily life, and how she managed to learn so well without anyone guiding her. The girl explained that she used to visit the community piano whenever she felt stressed or lonely. Music became her safe place, her way of expressing what she couldn't say. The pianist listened carefully. Deeply moved, later, when most people had left, the pianist and the girl sat together on the edge of the stage. The hall was almost empty, now, quiet and peaceful. The pianist told her gently, "This is just the beginning. It won't be easy, but if you want to learn more, I will help you." The girl nodded slowly, tears forming again, but this time they were tears of hope. She had never imagined that one decision to walk up to the stage would change her life so much. She had never expected her simple playing to touch so many hearts. They stood up, taking one last look at the piano that had been part of this beautiful moment. The pianist placed a hand on the girl's back and said softly, "Next time we will play together." The girl smiled. A shy but bright smile, the kind that comes from a new beginning. Outside the hall, the night air felt cool and calm. The girl walked home with a feeling she couldn't fully explain. It felt like the world had suddenly opened a door for her. A door she never thought she would be allowed to walk through, and all of it started with one single note.